Welcome back to Glow and Flow Radio, the space where we talk about the real, messy, complicated experiences of simply being human. Today, we're talking about something that millions of people experience but rarely gets discussed: having both depression and anxiety at the same time. If you've ever felt like you're being pulled in two completely opposite directions at once, or if you've ever been too depressed to care but too anxious to rest, or if you've ever felt both too much and not enough at the same time, this episode is for you. Living with both depression and anxiety is like being stuck between two opposing forces. Trust me, I know. And it's absolutely exhausting. Today, we're going to talk about what it feels like when depression and anxiety coexist, how this affects your eating patterns, why this combination is so misunderstood, and how to find middle ground when you're being pulled in opposite directions. So, take a breath. You're not alone in this in between space, and you're not too complicated to heal. So, let's get into it. Let's start by naming what this actually feels like. Depression says nothing matters. Why bother trying? You're too tired to do anything. Just stay in bed. Everything is pointless. While anxiety at the same time can say everything matters too much. You have to do everything right now. You can't rest. There's too much to do. Something terrible is going to happen. You're not doing enough. And when you have both at the same time, you're too depressed to do things anxiety is screaming at you to do. You're too anxious to rest the way depression needs you to do. It's like being exhausted but unable to sleep, wanting to stay in bed but feeling guilty for not being productive, caring about nothing but worrying about everything, having no energy but a racing mind, or feeling numb and overwhelmed at the same time. You're paralyzed but panicking simultaneously. And it's one of the most exhausting ways to exist. When you have both depression and anxiety, your relationship with food becomes even more complicated. Because depression and anxiety drive opposite eating patterns. For most people, there are some where it's pretty similar, but we'll talk about that. Depression often drives eating for any spark of pleasure, low energy food choices, whatever's easiest, eating to feel something or nothing, not caring what you eat, sometimes loss of appetite entirely. So it can be at one end of the spectrum or the other. You can either want to eat any and everything to feel better, to feel comforted, or at the opposite end of the spectrum, you may not want to eat anything at all. While anxiety often drives fast, frantic eating to calm your nervous system, stress eating to manage overwhelming feelings, eating quickly without tasting. You're not even tasting your food, you're just trying to get it in. Binge eating to release anxious energy, or restriction or control as a way to manage chaos. And when you have both, you might find yourself eating frantically one moment, then not caring at all the next, not, or maybe not wanting to eat. Or you may feel guilty for eating, the anxiety, but also not caring, the depression. Perhaps you're wanting to control your food, which is the anxiety part of you, but having no energy to do so. That's the depression. Perhaps you're eating for comfort, depression, then panicking about it, the anxiety. Or you're restricting because of anxiety, then binging because of depression. So it's like a tug of war going on inside your body, inside your mind. One part of you is frantically trying to control everything, while the other part of you is too depressed to care. And you're exhausted from the internal battle, because that's what it is. It's a battle that's going on inside your body and mind. And it can, impact you in various ways. It can cause interruptions in your sleep. I know I've experienced that. Mind just racing. Can't shut it off. Even though, you have depression that makes you feel like nothing matters. But then you have the anxiety portion that just keeps your mind racing. And just to disclose full transparency, I've dealt with depression just about all my life. And anxiety is relatively new to me, and it was brought on by an abusive relationship. And that's what I experienced in the aftermath of that. So I am speaking from a place of where I am in it with you. I experience depression and anxiety. I'm getting tongue tied. But getting back to understanding this combination, because it has been so misunderstood and it's rarely discussed, as I mentioned. Here's what makes having depression and anxiety so isolating, because it can be isolating, because although there are quite a few people who experience depression and anxiety at the same time, many more people experience one or the other. And when you have that, where you experience both at the same time, it's isolating because it's so misunderstood. If you get what I'm saying, I'm trying to explain it properly. And people don't understand how you can have both at once. They say things like, if you're too depressed to get out of bed, how can you also be anxious? Or if you're so anxious, why aren't you doing anything about it? Or you just need to rest, but anxiety won't let you. So, that's the catch-22 there. Or they'll say something like, just do something. But depression won't allow you to do something. You're stressing and you're anxious, but on the other end of the spectrum in your mind, the depression will not allow you. And people don't understand that when that battle is going on inside your head. They don't get that you can be both frozen and frantic at the same time. And I know it may be difficult for people to wrap their heads around. Maybe you have family or friends who can't wrap their head around what you're experiencing. And that is okay, as long as you have an understanding of what it is that you're experiencing. Even mental health conversations often separate depression and anxiety into two distinct experiences. But as I stated, for many people, they're not separate. They're intertwined. They're happening simultaneously. It may not be everyone's experience, but trust me when I tell you that is often the experience of many people. And that makes everything more complicated. Treatment that helps anxiety might not help depression, and vice versa. Coping strategies that work for one might make the other worse. And you're constantly trying to figure out which one is driving your behavior in any given moment. You're not complicated. You're experiencing a very real, very common co-occurrence of two conditions. And you deserve support that addresses both. I have to share a quick little story. I was talking to my daughter. She works in the medical field and has done so for years now. And she was asking me about my medications because I was telling her it was getting late. I need to take my medication. She's like, well, what are you taking? And so I started telling her what I take. It's only 3 medications. One is for anxiety, though, and another is for depression. And she was just like, well, my goodness, why are you taking both of those? And the third is for allergies, just to disclose that when I said I take 3. And so, we chuckled a little bit, and I didn't get too deeply into it, and she knows that I have been battling with depression. She doesn't know too much about the anxiety. I've never really had that conversation, but it was a shock for me when I started having symptoms of anxiety and then learning that I have anxiety and what that means and it was like 2 opposing forces within my head. And it was really disturbing to have gone through depression for years and then have anxiety become a part of that, a part of my journey, so to speak. And but learning that the two can coexist at the same time and how they intertwine and how they interact has helped tremendously. Even just having that knowledge, that recognition of how those two co-occur. So let's talk more about the paralysis panic loop when you're dealing with both depression and anxiety at the same time. We're going to call that the paralysis panic loop because depression kind of paralyzes you not in the physical sense, but mentally, because it makes you just not want to do anything. It kind of puts you at a standstill, whereas anxiety causes that panic and it makes you want to go, go, go. And so it can be a very frustrating pattern when you have both depression and anxiety. So here's how the paralysis panic loop goes. Step 1, you need to do something. You need something to do. A task, a responsibility, something on your to-do list. It's something you need to get done. And then step 2, anxiety says, do it now. Your heart races, your thoughts spiral, you feel urgent pressure. And then step 3, depression says, I can't. Your body feels heavy. You have no energy. Everything feels impossible. You feel overwhelmed. And then step 4, you're paralyzed. You can't do anything. You can't move. You get stuck. And then in step 5, anxiety escalates. Why are you doing anything? Or why aren't you doing anything? Excuse me. You're falling behind. Something terrible is going to happen. That's what's going through your mind. And then step 6, depression deepens. See, you can't do anything. You're useless. Why even try? You start having that negative self-talk because your anxiety is trying to tell you to go, go, go. And your depression is kind of keeping you in this state of mental paralysis. And then you start having the negative self-talk. And then there's step 7, the panic increases while the paralysis continues. You're simultaneously panicking about not doing anything, and you're unable to move forward, I should say. This is the paralysis panic loop, and it's one of the most exhausting experiences of having both depression and anxiety. You have that need to just go, go, go. It's like, I know I need to get this done, and you're stressing over it. But at the same time, your brain just wants to shut down, and you don't want to do anything. And it's a terrible conundrum to be in. So, how do you coexist in this space, or how do you exist in this in-between space, I should say? How do you function when depression says don't move, stay in bed? We're not doing anything right now. We're not doing anything today. And anxiety says move faster, get up. You have things to do. The answer is the middle path. Not the depression path, not the anxiety path, the middle path. And here's what that looks like. When anxiety says do everything now, the middle path says do one thing, then rest. When depression says stay in bed all day, the middle path says get up for 10 minutes, then you can rest again. And these are just examples. It can be 20 minutes. It can be a half hour. Whatever you decide and whatever is most comfortable for you. And when anxiety says you must control everything, the middle path says control what you can and let go of the rest. And I had to learn this. You control what you can, and you have to let go of what you cannot control. And when depression says nothing matters, the middle path says this one small thing matters right now. So, even though you're depressed and you don't feel like dealing with, I'm going to say coworkers, for instance, to get a project done, you have to find a middle ground there to okay, I'm going to put forth this effort for the next hour, hour and a half to get this project done and work with my team. Or it could be, I'm going to get up for this hour and clean my house, or half an hour. And it doesn't have to be the whole house. I'm just saying maybe wash the dishes. Okay, let's use that for the example. So it's about finding that middle path. that space in between, the space between frantic action and complete shutdown, the space between rigid control and total apathy, and the space between pushing yourself too hard and doing nothing at all. The middle path is sustainable, and sustainability is what you need when you're dealing with both. And it takes time. It's not going to be something that you get accustomed to overnight. But when you have those episodes where you're having a battle, an internal battle between depression and anxiety, then you have an understanding of what's going on, and you have to think about that middle ground, that middle path that you are going to take. And it looks differently for everyone. So again, it may be 10 minutes for one person, it may be an hour for another, where they get up and tackle one thing that they're anxious about. So, to get practical, you need to ask yourself, what do you actually do when depression and anxiety are both active? So right now I want to give you some tools because, I kind of talked about some strategy with the middle path, the middle ground. But let's dig a little deeper and talk about some tools, some strategy. Tool 1 is the and statement. So how this works is, instead of fighting yourself, acknowledge both. I'm anxious about this task, and I'm too depressed to have energy. It can be, I need rest, and I feel guilty for resting. I want to eat for comfort, and I'm anxious about eating. The and statement holds space for both experiences without making one wrong. So it's that acknowledgement of how you're feeling anxious about one thing on one end, but you're feeling you're having depression on the other end, and it's making you feel something completely opposite. And you can hold space for both feelings. And trust me, just that recognition helps, because when you lie down and you rest and you start feeling anxious because you're resting, you recognize the why behind it. You recognize that you're feeling anxious about resting because of your anxiety. But you need to, we all need rest, right? But maybe you're in bed because at that moment, you just, because of your depression, you feel like you can't do it. But it's like, man, I need to get up and get this done and that done. But you need to recognize what's going on and hold space for both feelings. Now, tool 2 is called the minimum viable action. When anxiety is pushing you to do everything and depression is stopping you from doing anything, ask yourself, what's the absolute smallest step I can take right now? Not the whole task, not even half, just the tiniest first step. For example, is not to clean the entire kitchen, but to put one dish in the sink or wash the few dishes. It's not to go to the gym, but change into comfortable clothing. Maybe do some stretching. It's not to make a whole meal. It may be to get a glass of water, make a cup of coffee or tea. Small action satisfies anxiety without overwhelming depression. I use this in my day job. You know, if I'm having a difficult day with my depression symptoms, and I know that my anxiety is pushing me and making me feel like I'm failing, I need to get something done, I take that middle path and I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend the next hour, 2 hours working on this, whatever project it is, whatever task it is. And then I'm going to allow myself to take a moment, to take a break. There are times at work when I just get up and walk, take a moment, take a breath. Or even better, couple that with breathing exercises to help calm things down. But the second tool is to take minimum viable action. And you're in control. You decide what that action is and what you can handle at that time, in that moment. Now, tool 3 is called the intentional rest. When you do rest, you do so with intention instead of giving in. Say out loud, I'm choosing to rest right now. This is what my body needs. This removes the guilt, which is anxiety driven, and allows actual recovery, which is what your depression needs. Tool 4 is the feelings check-in. When you can't tell if it's depression or anxiety driving a behavior, like eating, pause and ask yourself, what does my body feel like right now? Heavy is depression. Buzzing is anxiety. You could also ask yourself, what are my thoughts saying? Hopeless is depression. Racing is anxiety. Or you could ask yourself, what do I need? Rest is depression. Release is anxiety. And again, it goes back to that recognition. And that's why having these conversations and it's so important. You need to educate yourself on anxiety and depression, especially if you're dealing with both. I mean, even if you're dealing with either or, it's important. But if you're dealing with both, it's so important so that you can distinguish between the two and what's going on, what you're dealing with, so that you know how to address it. You can apply the appropriate strategy to address your needs. This helps you choose the right tool by asking these questions for what's actually happening. And tool 5 is called the both and approach to eating. So let me explain. When both depression and anxiety are affecting your food, give yourself permission to eat for comfort when you need it, which is going to satisfy the depression. For some people, again, that we're talking about the emotional eating side of depression. not the loss of appetite side of depression. I wanted to acknowledge that because I know everyone's story is different. Some people eat more when they're depressed, others eat much, much less. But this is when you eat for comfort, to soothe your depression symptoms. So you eat for comfort when you need it and regulate your nervous system before eating when you can. That's soothing the anxiety. So how would you soothe your nervous system before eating? You pause, take a moment, perhaps some breathing exercises. I love breathing exercises. They are very helpful. But there are a number of things you can do before you eat to help you manage anxiety. That's just one that I recommend trying because it's something quick, easy. You can do it anywhere. Eat easy foods that require no prep. That is great for dealing with depression because, again, depression makes you not want to do very much. So you find easy foods that require little prep and include protein when possible to stabilize mood. That helps with both anxiety and depression. And don't judge yourself for emotional eating. That helps with both too, because the emotional eating cycle will take over if you start judging yourself, feeling guilty, shaming yourself, having that negative self-talk, because the shame, the guilt, the negative self-talk, that fuels that cycle. So we're wanting to disrupt that cycle by not judging yourself, not allowing yourself to feel shame or guilt for giving your body what it needs. You should never feel shame for that, because your body is trying to soothe you. Now we can reroute and, redirect our bodies, but that takes time. So you can't be harsh on yourself if your body is doing what is best, doing its best, I should say, to soothe your nervous system. Even if it's trying to do so by way of food. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is compassion for yourself in the middle of two competing forces. And that's why, with Glow and Flow, I focus on emotional eating, but also the underlying cause, which for many is anxiety and depression and trauma and stress and overwhelm, burnout. It's a number of things, but specifically, a lot of people who battle the emotional eating cycle are dealing with anxiety and or depression, many times due to some type of trauma, right? So if that's why I recommend that if you are battling anxiety and depression, don't do it alone. Get the help that you need. It is important, and it's not anything to be ashamed of. I fully disclose that I am on medication to help, and it has helped tremendously. And when I miss doses, because I have in the past, trust me, it was evident. So it is helpful. And there is nothing wrong with that. We are removing that stigma right now on mental health because it's about health. Keyword is health. And mental health is important. And we see that even more so today than any other time that I've been alive. I mean, mental health has always been important, but it just seems like over the past, I don't know, 5 years or so, there's been a sharp decline of people's mental health, especially here in the United States with everything that's going on. People are struggling mentally. So let's remove that. No more stigma there. If you need help, if you need support, get what you need to feel healthy, whole, happy. It's not about anyone else. It's about you. This is about you, your health, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, all the pillars. It's about healing yourself holistically, the whole person. And here's why treating both matters and why you need to seek this treatment. If you only treat depression, the anxiety will still be there. If you only treat anxiety, the depression will still be there. You need to treat both. You need support that addresses both. And you need mental health professionals, MDs, that understand both. This might look like therapy that acknowledges co-occurring conditions. Medication that targets both. Some medications help both depression and anxiety. Sometimes you'll need to be on a depression pill for your anxiety. Sometimes you'll need to also be on a separate one for depression. You need to speak to your doctor and see what will work best to manage your symptoms. A holistic approach that includes nervous system regulation and mood support. And lifestyle practices that addresses both activation for depression and calming for anxiety. Treatment that only addresses one will always feel incomplete. And again, there's nothing to be ashamed of if you experience both. You deserve treatment that sees the full picture. Some days one is louder than the other. Some days it's mostly depression. Some days it's mostly anxiety. But some days both are screaming at full volume. And that's something I didn't mention earlier, but yes, I'm glad I have this in my notes because yes, there are some days that you're going to experience depression and anxiety will not even be present. Other days you're just really anxious. And that's normal as well. So just because you have a diagnosis of depression and anxiety, whatever type of depression, even if you have both diagnoses, you still will have days where one or the other is more activated than the other. And that's normal. So they may both be activated at the same time, or one day you may be dealing with depression and not anxiety symptoms, and that's okay. But on days when you're dealing with both, your only job is survival. Not productivity, not perfection, not progress. Just get through the day. And what does that look like? It means eat something, anything. Drink water. Take your medication if you have it. And you should. If it's been prescribed to you, you should have it on hand. Don't do what I did months ago and let it run out and like, oh, just life goes on until you realize why it's important to have that medication. And for me, it was just those negative thoughts, depressive thoughts coming into play. And I had been doing so well, and I went days and days without that medication. And I guess I had gone too long without it. And so those negative thoughts start creeping back in. So, and my best friend, she was like, "Are you taking your medication?" And I was like, "Well, I'm out right now." And she was like, "Oh my goodness." And we both kind of chuckled, and I can laugh about it now, but it's like, "Oh my goodness, yes, I had not been taking my medication." And that explains a lot. So it's important. I say all that to say it is important to take your medication. And you need to breathe. Breathing exercises, I can't stress that enough. And on our YouTube channel, Glow and Flow Holistics YouTube channel, there are some great breathing exercise videos that you can follow along with. That'll help you learn how to breathe properly, because there is a method to it when you're performing breathing exercises to calm yourself. And be as gentle with yourself as you would with a small child. No negative self-talk. When you recognize that you are being negative, you redirect. I do that all the time. When I have negative thoughts creeping in, I immediately recognize it, acknowledge it, and redirect. And that's enough. On the days when both depression and anxiety are fully active, just making it through is a victory. And tomorrow is a new day. Living with both depression and anxiety is exhausting, I know. You're constantly managing two opposing forces. You're pulled between do nothing and do everything. You're too depressed to care, but too anxious to rest. And you're doing your best in an impossible situation. You're not too complicated. I don't care what anyone has told you, whether it was a husband, a wife, a best friend, a parent, an aunt, a coworker. I don't care who it was. You are not too complicated. You are not too broken. You're not failing. You're surviving something really hard. And survival is enough. Find your middle path. Take the smallest steps. Treat yourself with compassion. You deserve support that sees both. You deserve rest that doesn't come with guilt. You deserve healing that honors the full complexity of your experience. One day at a time, one moment at a time, one breath at a time. You're not alone in this in-between space. We're in this together, all of us, because there's many out there. And you are stronger than you know. Until next time, glow through the in-between, flow with compassion for all of your experiences, and remember, you deserve peace even when depression and anxiety are both loud.